Gosh. My finger gets click happy. All right, we're good to go.
Good to go. All right. Good morning, everyone. I'm Jim Dill, Senate Chair of the Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry Committee. I want to welcome everybody here this morning to our work session, and we have 4 or 5 bills on our docket today. And so what I'll do is I'll start with introductions first. So Representative Landry.
Good morning. I'm Representative Scott Landry. I live in Farmington. I represent the towns of Farmington and New Sharon.
Senator Black.
Good morning. Russ Black from Wilton. I represent Senate District 17, which is all of Franklin County, 4 towns in Kennebec, going from Belgrade Sydney line just north of the Civic Center to Cobangora on the border.
Representative Hall.
Good morning, Randy Hall. I live in the town of Wilton, and I represent 6 towns in southern Franklin County, District 114.
Representative O'Neill.
Morning. Thanks, Mr. Chair. My name is Maggie O'Neill, and I am here representing House District 15.
Representative Schofield.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Tom Schofield, and I represent House District 112. I live in the town of Weld, and I represent 17 towns and townships in Franklin and Somerset counties, the High Peaks region of Maine.
Representative Osher.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Lori Osher. I'm representative from District 123. That's most of Orno, the home of the University of Maine.
Senator Maxman.
Hi there, I'm Chloe Maxman. I represent Senate District 13, which is all of Lincoln County except for Dresden, plus Washington and Windsor.
Representative Bernard.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Sue Bernard. I represent District 149, which is Caribou, New Sweden, and Westmanland. Good morning.
Representative Underwood.
I'm Joseph Underwood from Presque Isle, and I represent District 147 and use Representative Osher's quote, home of the University of Maine at Presque Isle. Thank you.
And Representative Pluker.
Hey, this is Bill Pluker, House District 95, which represents Warren, Hope, Appleton, and part of Union. I have my eyes dilated, so I'll be squinting, and I might have some my glasses on every once in a while. So, that's where I'm at.
Admit it, you're down in sunny Florida or something. So, okay, with that, I'm Jim Dill. I represent Senate District number 5, Northern Penobscot County. And we have our clerk with us this morning, Cheryl McGowan, and our analyst, which is Karen Netto. And with that, we'll work our bills this morning. And the first one we have on the agenda is LD 519, an act to protect children from exposure to toxic chemicals. Karen.
Okay, so this bill bans the use of synthetic herbicides, including but not limited to glyphosate, within 75 feet of school grounds. The prohibition does not apply to agricultural land or residential property, and it directs the Board of Pesticides Control to establish an Environmental Risk Advisory Committee, also known as an ERAC, to assess the environmental and human health risks associated with the use of glyphosate. So for those of you who are on the committee in the 129th, you may recall last year we had, this committee had LD 1888, an act to protect children from toxic chemicals. And so the committee vote at the time was pretty evenly divided, 7-6, and there were 2 amendments. And so this bill is the same as the minority report from the 129th. So the minority report, obviously it bans the use of synthetic herbicides, and the majority report from the 129th only prohibited the use of glyphosate in particular within 75 feet of school grounds. And both committee reports included the ERAC as this bill does before you today. So we did not receive the fiscal impact statement. However, I did look at the fiscal notes from the bill from last year, and there was a fiscal note for both reports because of the ERAC. The board indicated that it would require an additional staffing, and so the amendment includes additional allocations of $103,540 that would go to the board to allow expenditures of existing resources for one toxicologist, contracted staffing, environmental sampling, and literature review. There were a few information requests at the public hearing for this bill. I won't go through them all now, but I will say the ones that were directed to the Board of Pesticides Control, the committee did ask for them to come back with some language that would create an exemption for herbicides that are used for dermally noxious plants. We heard about the terrible case of the child who got a bad case of poison ivy. So we do have some language for you to discuss. There was also a question about other school districts that have banned herbicides. And according to the director of the board, Megan Patterson, there are municipalities that have prohibited the use of pesticides, but she wasn't aware of any school districts in particular that have done so. And then finally, there was a question about other states that may ban pesticides on school grounds or property. And I did hear from Kathy Murray, the entomologist with the department. She said that Connecticut bans EPA registered pesticides on K through 8 grounds, and New York bans pesticides on all school grounds. But schools, there are some exceptions to that, but schools can request an exemption from their pesticide regulatory agency. So the last thing I wanted to mention is, so the Environmental Risk Advisory Committee was in last year's bill. It's in this bill before you today. One comment that I heard at the public hearing from the board is there's also another process called the Medical Advisory Committee. And the director did suggest that if the committee wants to move forward with that idea, that might be the more appropriate vehicle, because this bill is about, the potential impact of some pesticides on human health. So that might be the better committee to look at that issue. And that's all I have for now.
So Karen, this bill, of course, the way it appears is that you can't apply it within 75 feet of school grounds. So therefore, would also prohibit the use of it on school grounds. Is that,
exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I did double check on that because there was a question, and 0 feet is within 75 feet. So,
well, yeah, no, it's just kind of a strange way of looking at it. It almost looked like you could use it on the school grounds, but you couldn't use it if you're outside the school grounds within 75 feet of the school grounds. So it was kind of misleading to a point. So I was just curious. Okay, so this will prohibit the use of it on school grounds too. Okay.
Yes, I did check. I'm not an attorney. I did check with the committee's counsel, and that's our read.
Okay.
From OPLA. Yep.
All right. Very good. Are there any other questions for Karen? Okay. Is there anybody you want to hear from before we start our discussion? I'm sure we have somebody here from the Board of Pesticides Control. I thought I saw Megan Patterson out in the audience. Did I not? Kathy Murray's.
Yes.
Yeah, Megan's here. Okay. So is there anybody? Yes. Is Megan in?
No, I'll let her in right now.
All right. Representative Schofield, you have a question, comment?
I just, I'll phrase it this way, Senator Dill, thank you. During the hearing, I brought up the idea perhaps having a no man's land, if you want to call it that, or no student land on the school grounds, if they are adjacent to these lands that are being sprayed. And I would just like to have someone comment on that who is in the industry or who is representing anybody. I'd like to take that into consideration at some point. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Megan here. So Megan, I don't know if you can respond to that from a standpoint of trying to, I guess that wouldn't be up to the Board of Pesticides Control to do that. If what I'm hearing Representative Schofield say, that basically it could be sprayed, but kids would not be able to be close to the edge of the school grounds, because if I hear you right, Representative Schofield, they'd be spraying on the other side of the school ground, on the other side of the fence, let's say. So instead of making the border be on the property of the person that's spraying, the 75-foot zone would be on the other side of the fence on the school ground. So that in reality would give us that buffer zone. But my kind of question to you is if you can comment on that, but also what is a sensitive area and how would that play into this anyway?
Yeah, so we have a couple of definitions of, I guess the sensitive areas piece is easiest for me to answer because we have definitions pertaining specifically to that. We have SALOs, sensitive areas likely to be occupied, and then we have sensitive areas just in general. That's where, people are likely to be present, people of all ages, or where food is grown. There are a number of different types of sensitive areas, anywhere where you might have an off-target organism impacted by a pesticide application, and you can somehow buffer it, be aware of it. Applicators are instructed to be aware of it, to buffer it if necessary, to pay attention to wind direction and so forth to make sure drift isn't moving off target, or product isn't moving off target in the form of drift. And then with regard to, I guess, buffers, so yeah, we wouldn't have any jurisdiction over a buffer on school grounds. I mean, if the school had the capacity to have children not play in an area within 75 feet of neighboring properties, I guess that would be a question probably for Department of Education and affiliated schools.
Right. Along that same line of questioning, so is then a school ground, well, let's say it was a baseball field and, they're not out there all the time, but if the ball is hit out in left field and, someone has to go out to retrieve the ball, is that considered a sensitive area, the ball field, let's say, on a school ground? So then therefore, if someone was applying on the other side of the fence, they would have to be aware of it as a sensitive area?
I think, so any ball field, yes. I mean, where children are likely to be present and playing, they would need to be aware that children are going to be there and playing. Now, if it rolls off the ball field and into an adjacent property and then no longer. I guess the assumption should be children are playing in that area, and so caution should be taken. But that's not expressly outlined in rule that should something move off of the area of the formal area of the ball field. I mean, we don't go into that degree of detail.
But what I guess I'm asking, other than, of course, this would apply to the school ground itself and not applying chemicals, and that's kind of a different issue at the moment. But I guess what I'm asking is, do we already have regulations in place that would prohibit someone from applying these chemicals within 75 feet of the school ground?
We don't have prohibitions of applications. So no, there are.
Even though it's a sensitive area.
Even though it's a sensitive area, so there are precautions that need to be taken, but it is not a prohibition of use. It's more like that it needs to be posted. If it was going to be on school grounds, so any application on school grounds would have to be approved by the IPM coordinator, who's appointed for the school and trained by Kathy Murray, who I think you've also heard from, and BPC staff. They have a preliminary training they have to obtain, and then they have to obtain additional follow-up training that talks about everything from product to selection so that they know how to choose the lowest risk pesticide possible for the scenarios that they're looking at. But it also talks about integrated pest management as a whole and non-pesticide approaches to controlling pest complexes. And all of that is under the purview. So school grounds, ball fields, where children are going to play that are associated with the school facility, where children are predominantly used by school children. So that could also be ball fields that aren't necessarily owned by the school, but are primarily used by the school. And that's defined in rule as well. All of those areas fall under the purview of that school IPM coordinator, who has to make decisions about whether or not they are going to allow the pesticides. They have to sign off on them before they happen. They have to keep records of all that information. So that bill that you're also looking at, 524, that's where those records come into play. That's record of anything that would have happened on those school grounds, the ball fields, in the school building itself, anywhere where children might be exposed while they're at school or attending a school function. So there are prohibitions, and in that sense, there are restrictions on what could happen. And schools are, of course, encouraged to use the lowest risk pesticide possible if they have to choose a pesticide. They're also encouraged to rely on alternative approaches. I believe Kathy just was a part of a paper that was published that talked about alternative approaches like spreading organic matter cultivation in the form of aeration as a means of also controlling weed pressure in ball fields and so forth. So trying to look at that whole complex of approaches to managing pest complexes.
Thank you. Representative O'Neill.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think something that I had requested was, do we have any examples of folks that are applying that would fall within that 75-foot buffer zone? And I want to say that I know that Representative McCray, I don't think he's able to be here today, but he had a ton of questions the last time around when we worked this, because I know the committee worked Rep. Grimlick's idea in the last session, and we had a lot of these things come up, and we worked to address them with how we tailored what this bill would do. But have you heard anything from anybody that would fall within a 75-foot buffer zone, or have reason to think that people are applying in the areas that would fall within this bill?
So I guess it would depend on the property. I mean, so if it's a farm, then possibly. If it's a homeowner, again, possibly. They could be doing tick and mosquito control work on their own lands, or hiring someone to do so. Those would be likely commercial applicators that would be doing most of that work. They have ornamental vegetation on their property, possibly.
Yeah, I don't think those are our big concerns, are whether somebody's spraying for mosquitoes on like a small sliver of their residential property or something. But just, do we have examples of farms that you know of that would fall within that?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't get that question from Karen, so I didn't prepare anything for that. I guess in terms of farms that are adjacent to schools, I'm sure there could be applications made for crop protection adjacent to schools. I mean, particularly if you're thinking about
not adjacent, but within that 75-foot buffer zone, Megan.
Yep.
Or I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, so adjacent would be within 75 feet. That would be in that area. And certainly a headland could exist in that space. And headland in the sense of farming would be, sort of the edge of the field. And if they have to maintain, the terminology used in agriculture, if they have to maintain vegetation in that area, for example, to control plants that could harbor other pests, that would be interesting to the crop as well. So for example, like nightshade. So nightshade could be growing in that headland. They might want to do weed control in that headland in addition to doing weed control in their field, because nightshade can be a host for Colorado potato beetle, just like it can be a host for potato plants. Potato plants can be a host for it. So I would certainly think that there could be situations where an agricultural producer, although by this bill, agriculture is exempted. So I guess, yes, I think applications could occur of herbicides, but in the same breath, the bill currently exempts agriculture from the prohibition for application. So I guess I'm not sure are you thinking other properties other than the private properties like farms and private residences?
Maybe I'm not making sense. I was just hearing a possibility that folks would be affected by this. And my question was really not in hypotheticals, but do we have examples of folks that have come forward that would be affected by it? Do you know of, from all your work, do you know of people that would be? That was just kind of
okay. Yeah, no, I've not prepared anything or reached out to anybody, but I guess in the same breath, I don't know how many farmers closely follow the hearings here. So I don't know that they would have just come forward on their own. But no, I did not reach out to people. I did not get that request from Karen. So my apologies. Did not realize that was aimed at me.
No, it wasn't. I'm just asking about what you know. Thanks.
Yeah, I guess so. I can only speak in hypotheticals because no one's come forward regarding this bill specifically.
Representative Schofield. Are you all set with your question? You're muted.
Yes, I think it's been answered. Thank you, Senator Dill.
All right, thank you. Senator Black.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Seeing that agriculture is exempted, and we'd probably be talking about commercial properties or homeowners, and I guess most of those wouldn't be, especially homeowners, wouldn't be using, probably be doing themselves. I guess I'm not so concerned with banning the homeowners within 75 feet. But the one concern I did have was going back to the example we had of the poison ivy when there was a situation, that was like that, a terrible outgrowth of poison ivy or something on the school grounds or on adjacent property that would affect the students. Is there a possibility of some way of exempting a situation like that? I don't know whether, I don't know who the question would go to, if it would go to Megan or somebody else, but that would be my concern. I don't have so much, probably the commercial, if a commercial lot was up against a school, they might use a licensed applicator, but certainly most of your homeowners wouldn't be using. So, but the instant comes back, Megan, I don't know if there's any kind of you have any kind of a program or an exemption for an outbreak of some kind of a toxic weed. I guess that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, so I think you're right. So homeowners also, at least in the current bill text, are exempted. So residential properties and agricultural producers. So and I could be wrong about this, but in my understanding of this, it would affect, exactly as you're saying, commercial properties. So that could be, I guess restaurants, it could be banks, it could be, your anything that is open to use by the public. It could be a store. So they would have a prohibition on use of herbicides or within that 75-foot area, synthetic herbicides within 75 feet. When it comes to prohibitions, and yes, they would be obligated to hire a commercial applicator. They could not do their own work on their own property. So anytime you have a business or any property that's open to use by the public, you have to hire a commercial applicator to do that work. Or you could become licensed and do your own work. But that would basically be your only other option. We don't see that happening very often. With regard to exemptions, we don't have anything currently pertaining to specifically the kinds of pest complexes we're talking about here on school grounds. We do have variants for applications to control poison ivy and other noxious weeds. And that's where some of the language that I provided to Karen came from regarding how to define poison ivy. Dermally toxic plants is how we talked about them in our policy. So we do have a variance for applications within 25 feet for things like giant hogweed, which can be very dermally toxic, things like poison ivy, and then sort of the currently unrealized plants in Maine that also can pose a hazard to human health. But Connecticut specifically has addressed this. So I just share that because we have a variance approach to that. So you have to seek a variance through with the board. You have to submit a plan on how you're going to control the pest complex, and then that's reviewed by staff, shared with the board. You get a letter saying you can do this work, and here's your limited time frame in which you can do it. When it comes to Connecticut, they have a kind of similar process, but their process is handled in terms of variances for controlling things like poison ivy, and they specifically cite giant hogweed, but it also pertains for them to mosquitoes and ticks and stinging insects. They actually allow their school staff to decide when they've met that emergency threshold for needing to do something. And I'm looking to the left because there's a guidance document that Connecticut Department of Agriculture has produced to provide them with guidance to determine when there's an emergency situation, what constitutes an emergency. So I guess I can speak to Representative O'Neill and her comment from before, which was, teach people how to identify poison ivy. That is part of the guidance that Connecticut provides, teach people how to identify it, confirm that children are actually playing in that area. If they are playing in that area, then choose to use a very targeted application. If you're going to use an application method, apply an herbicide and do a spot treatment as opposed to a broadcast treatment. So they do provide guidance in that sense. New York takes a slightly different approach. They actually use the variance process that I just described that we use for applications within 25 feet of water. So you kind of get two different approaches. One where they're sort of expecting that the school staff are able to make that choice. And you already have here in Maine, an individual at each school, a school IPM coordinator, who is responsible for making those specific choices at each school. You could also go the other way. We do have mechanisms with the Board of Pesticides Control for variances. So if you wanted to go that way, we also have familiarity with the process of variance issuance. So, does that answer your question or questions?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Sure.
Representative Landry.
Pretty much more of the same, but just trying to simplify things in my mind, Megan.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, residential or agriculture exposures are not, they're exempted anyway.
Yeah, at least according to my reading of this bill, yes, they are exempted.
And according to what's already on the books, you can get an exemption if you're a commercial, which is the only other situation to waive it or to use targeted applications.
Not on school grounds, not on school grounds. So they wouldn't be able to, yeah. So this bill would prohibit even those commercial applicators from making pesticide applications on school grounds or within 75 feet of them.
Oh, it would ban the commercial within 75.
Yes.
You can't even get an exemption for poison ivy or hogweed within 75.
No, well, I guess that's a matter for maybe the AG's office to do an interpretation of how this would pertain. But yeah, I don't think so. I think you would be prohibited from making those applications with this law or bill.
Okay, so if I've got a wood lot, which is a commercial application right next to your school ground and it's loaded with poison ivy, kids just have to stay out of it.
Yeah, I guess that would be, I guess that would be the interpretation of this, unless you were to provide some exemption where applications could be made, or, I guess poison ivy can be hand-pulled. It's a risky proposition, but it can be done. And generally speaking, in most, turf areas, I realize you're not talking about a turf area, you're talking about a wood lot, but in most turf areas, generally you don't want to mow poison ivy, but you can keep poison ivy at bay if you keep an area mowed. So it's sort of, I think in most cases where you'd have to do an application, you'd get control and then you'd maintain control by mechanical maintenance as opposed to chemical control going on and on and on. It could be a targeted, maybe 1 or 2 time application.
Thank you, Megan.
Sure.
Representative Hall.
Yeah, thank you, Senator Dill. Just basically a comment. Back during when we had testimony during the public hearing, one person mentioned that using pesticides would only be used as a last resort, which I totally agree with. But if we vote this bill in the way it's written, that wouldn't even be would be no way you could use that. And personally, I think on the case like with the use, for example, the poison ivy, if you've got school that is, when the school is out of session, if something like that needed to be controlled, that obviously I would think you could go in, tape the area off, spray, and get it done when the children are not present. I mean, because they have a couple of months off in the summertime. So I think if we move this bill forward and vote it in, it's going to take that off the table. So I don't know, just the way it's written right now, I'm kind of opposed to it.
So one of the things that we discussed last time, I can see this again, maybe going two ways. We could do it a couple ways. One is we could add in certainly an exemption for toxic weeds or other emergency pests, which would take in, like Megan said, on Connecticut, which would be wasps and bees and ticks and that type of thing. And we could go like we did last year too, and just make this a glyphosate. Do away with the use of glyphosate, allowing other herbicides to be used. And we could also look at a MAC instead of an ERAC, which again, Megan suggested may be a more appropriate way to go, to have a medical group look at this. That would be glyphosate in general, which is where we were last year, not all synthetic herbicides, but at least just glyphosate. But the need of that may not be necessary if we decided to go just with glyphosate and leave other synthetic herbicides, unless we decided that we would want the MAC to look at other synthetic herbicides also, to see if there's something that they would come back to us and say, you really ought to maybe move this one out too, or something. So that's an option in front of us. Representative Underwood.
Yes, good morning. The only thing I had was a comment too also. In say the 131st, if they're the next legislature, if they decided to withdraw the ban on agriculture or the exemption for agriculture, they could do that. And I'm a no vote on this. Thank you.
Let's see. Well, Senator Maxman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One comment and one question. I think I hear the need for a carve out around poison ivy. I guess there's just, like, in my mind, if there's a space where the stuff is sprayed and kids can't go, it's like almost the same as having a space where there's poison ivy and kids can't go. And so I was wondering, I think Sharon Treat is in the waiting room. I was wondering if she could come in and talk a little bit about alternatives to treating poison ivy. I think that's a missing piece of this conversation right now that I'd like to learn more about.
I'm sorry, Senator, who did you say?
Sharon Treat, I think.
Oh, Sharon Treat, okay.
Space.
Is Sharon Treat out there?
Yes, she is. Would you like me to bring her in?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Hello?
Good morning.
Good
Hi,
morning.
how are you today?
I'm well. I was really kind of monitoring this while I was waiting for one of your other bills. So I'm not totally prepared on this, and let me get my headset so it doesn't cause all kinds of weird echoes.
Yeah, and I believe Senator Maxman has a question directly for you.
Okay, hang on while I get set up here.
No worries.
Don't we love it? Okay. Question.
Thank you so much, Ms. Treat, for coming in today. As you've said, you've heard the discussion. I'm curious to learn more about alternatives for treating poison ivy that aren't these synthetic herbicides. If you could talk about that.
Yeah, well, there are some alternatives. What I don't know is how useful they are in, like, say, a really large scale one, but certainly I know that even just vinegar, diluted vinegar, and Clorox bleach, which of course is toxic as well, are effective in killing poison ivy. And I've in fact done it myself, but you can research that to find that out. So, I mean, I think there are things that schools could try that do in fact kill these plants like poison ivy as a first step, you know, instead of going straight to the pesticides for these toxic substances. So that's about what I know, but I do know that there are, you could research that and find out, you know, other specifics on that as well.
May I ask another question, Mr. Chair?
Sure.
Thank you for that information. I guess my follow-up question is there, I don't know, is there, it sounds like maybe there isn't, but is there established practice around using alternative methods either in Maine or in other states? It sounds like you're saying we kind of have to figure it out as we go, but I'm wondering if there's something more concrete that we can follow.
Well, there may be. I haven't researched it myself because I wasn't preparing on this particular issue. So, but I think that, you know, I mean, there may well be other places that involve schools that have various bans. I mean, I understand that Maine isn't the only state pursuing this. So that might be additional information that could be brought back to the committee if you want that. But.
Okay, thank you so much. That's helpful.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
So I have a question for Megan on that topic. Megan, where are we with being able to use something like vinegar and bleach and that type of thing to control poison ivy?
Yeah, so unless school staff so both of those would be considered pesticides under both federal and state law and in all states. So that is, I mean, using bleach, bleach actually specifically is a pesticide when it's labeled to control microbial organisms. So that would be actually an off-label use and would be unlawful both by state and federal law. So schools could be fined for doing that work. I'm not sure, and it's also not labeled for that purpose. So there's that, I guess. When it comes to household vinegar, I don't know about household vinegar in terms of controlling woody ornamentals or woody vegetation like poison ivy. There's a good chance that it wouldn't do much more than discolor the vegetation. So I guess when you're thinking about acetic acid, which is how, you know, we would think about horticultural acetic acid, for example, generally it's a defoliant and not a systemic herbicide. So it's, you know, it may require repeat applications. I don't have a lot of familiarity with people using horticultural vinegar and its efficacy. I'm certainly familiar with people using it, but in terms of its efficacy for long-term control of poison ivy, you know, certainly something we could look into to see if it is in fact effective. But again, that would be a pesticide. And generally that's a 30% acetic acid compound. So generally requires, you know, a respirator to use. It's a 48-hour reentry period, according to the label. It is registered as a pesticide as well. So there are some communities that have looked into using horticultural vinegar, I think for the control of, I think it was for knotweed in one town. And they were looking at use of it in close proximity to water. And it didn't have to do with a school though. So I don't know if they actually explored that and then ultimately did the work or not, if it was effective. So I guess two things here, you know, the school couldn't do their own pesticide applications. They could do mechanical control, they could do polling. So as I mentioned, that certainly is a means of, in fact, it is one of the identified methods of controlling poison ivy that doesn't require chemicals. And you could also just maintain the area by mowing it, and that would keep poison ivy from encroaching. So there are approaches you could take. It's just not recommended that you mow poison ivy, primarily because you can volatilize some of those chemicals and then somebody could have a rash. I personally do mow a small patch of poison ivy and it keeps it in check. I don't seem to have an issue with a rash from it, but it isn't a recommended practice because you can't be sure if you're going to have a reaction or not. So I guess there are approaches, but I think schools in particular, because they're government entities and not private homeowners, are going to be held to those laws.
Thank you, Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So what happens, are the plants, this Director Patterson, are the plants still dangerous even after you kill them with herbicide? Like how does that work with cleanup and what's left? And just curious.
So you mean the poison ivy itself? So I mean, it would rot. So the plant will rot over time. I will say, so it does remain dermally toxic in terms of the poison ivy itself until it rots into the soil. My nephew found a stick that happened to be a poison ivy vine that had been defoliated and played with it for a while, and naturally defoliated from just frost, and did get a pretty bad case of poison ivy. So I guess there's that. They do break down over time. It isn't as though, I mean, we talk about forever chemicals, but with regard to pesticides, they do have half-lives, as do all chemicals. And so they do break down over time. So it would be dependent upon which chemical you're using to control it. If you're thinking about the half-life of the pesticide, and then with regard to the poison ivy, it's just a matter of it breaking down just by natural decay.
Thanks. Oh, I was just curious if it stayed giving you a rash, just like you, because you mentioned the mowing thing.
It can, it definitely can, yeah. So my nephew definitely had that really fabulous experience of playing with, literally, he thought it was a stick all day long, and got a pretty good case of poison ivy. Yeah. So
sounds rough. Yeah. My follow-up question for you is that, can you talk a little more, and I'm sorry if I missed it, trying to follow everything. Can you talk a little more about what it looks like for Connecticut and New York in practice if they already do this, just so we can understand what that would look like for schools in Maine?
Yeah, so Connecticut, what they're prohibiting is a bit broader than what you're prohibiting here. But what they've said is where there are situations where a pest complex is presents an emergency situation, and I think it's an emergency, something about a concern for human health. Determination of threats to human health, allowing application of lawn care pesticides at schools. So in those cases, they've identified a series of pests and sort of outlined what would be considered appropriate responses to control of those pests, and then the circumstances under which you might make the decision to use a pesticide that would otherwise be prohibited. And they've left that decision-making process up to the schools themselves. So I don't know what their school IPM coordinator situation is, if they have that individual appointed in Connecticut for each school, but they've also left that decision-making process up to, they've named a few individuals in the school system, like the superintendent or a public health official associated with a community. They can make that decision if they've met the threshold for an emergency situation and then do control. For something like poison ivy or hogweed. When it comes to New York has approached it differently. They've chosen to go with requiring schools to seek a variance. And so I would imagine that would follow something like our variance process here for other applications, where the school would apply, or an applicator would apply on behalf of the school to the Board of Pesticides Control for permission to, or a permit to make a pesticide application, and specifically what that pesticide application would be for.
Thank you. A follow-up, please, Mr. Chair?
Sure.
Can you explain a little bit more, just so I can follow, when you mentioned the IPM coordinator and that they would make the call at the school? So this is a person that has this training, is designated to make these decisions, and they make a determination as to whether there's some kind of emergency that requires it. Do they have to check in with anybody? Like, how does it work?
Yeah, so they don't have to check in with anybody, but they do have the resources of the department. So if they have any questions, there's a lot of back and forth between, at the moment, Dr. Kathy Murray, who you've heard from. So she is in constant communication with that group of IPM coordinators. And they also get training from EPA, sort of ongoing modules that are specifically designed for training that group of people, in addition to state level training that they have to obtain. And they get inspected by us on a routine basis as well, by the Board of Pesticides Control inspection staff. But when it comes to making decisions about what should be applied, they're instructed on how to identify the lowest risk option, how to identify when a pesticide is needed or determined to be necessary, And they're also educated in integrated pest management. So really it's the whole complex of identifying the problem, monitoring for the problem, how to prevent the problem from occurring in the first place so that you don't find yourself in a position of needing to rely on a pesticide. For example, exclusion with rodents, so that you don't have to then do something to control rodents. Or when it comes to, what else? I mean, I guess when it comes to things like indoor pests, it's quite easy, right, to control them in the sense that if you're vigilant and do a lot of work, then they're quite easy to control. But things like maintaining sanitation, not allowing leaky faucets to run, that kind of thing. I guess with regard to their decision-making process, they would review what options are presented and make a decision that way based on reviewing the label. They're instructed on how to do that and determine, if it's appropriate or not. So that school IPM coordinator, does have to some degree the authority in the school for all pesticide decisions.
So if I can just follow up really quickly to make sure I'm following.
Sure.
Really, the only change is that no application of pesticides is the default, but in emergency situations, they have the authority to go and make those calls. But it just kind of shifts the default from the IPM approach to no pesticides and in emergency situations.
It's only herbicides that are being prohibited. So it's so everything else.
Oh, I'm referring back to what I'm reading about Connecticut, because I was asking about how that works in practice, and then you gave the example of Connecticut. So I'm just trying to picture how other states make it work. And as an example.
So I think it's more or less, I mean, the sense that they're signing off on it, I mean, they're still going through the process, I think, the thought process of, is this necessary? And I think you'd find that a lot of schools they're not making a lot of gratuitous applications. I mean, they're not just, they're thinking about budgets. And I think, probably somebody from the Department of Education would be more appropriate for this, but they're thinking about all of those components of cost. They're also thinking about notification. So under current law, and I think somebody had mentioned this, make applications in the summertime. Well, if applications are made when children are in session, when school is in session and children are present, notification has to be provided to parents, teachers, students, and staff regarding that application, so that they're aware that that's going to take place. Each of the schools has to adopt a policy on integrated pest management and how to maintain pest complexes. They have to publish this in their student handbook. That has to be made available to everyone at the beginning of the year. And it says who to contact if you have questions about pest management and pesticide use on school grounds, which is the IPM coordinator. It also has to share their policy. So, I mean, all of that is already in play. With regard to having this person oversee the application, I mean, they'd have to sign off on it anyway. And if it was going to happen within the school year, when school was in session, they would have to provide notification under current law, regardless of the outcome of this bill.
Thank you. So I think I just got confused. Oh, my computer's gonna die. I was asking about Connecticut. Were you talking about Maine just now when you were talking about?
Yeah.
Okay. So you were saying there's not too much of a difference, but the difference in Connecticut, it would be just that there's a default of no pesticides, but it's the same kind of coordinator. Okay, I'm following.
Yes.
Thank you.
Let's see. Next is Senator Maxman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not sure if this question is best directed at Director Patterson or Ms. Cheat, but I know that there's quite a few towns in Maine that have already banned the use of glyphosate, including on school grounds. So they must have a solution to this or navigate this somehow. I mean, like including, I think it's Portland, South Portland, Agunquit, and a couple others. And what do they do?
Yeah, I think they make emergency exemptions for certain pest complexes. So I guess I can't speak to each of the ordinances in particular. We don't have authority over the ordinances, but I do believe most of them have some sort of exemption for emergency pest treatment where it's a human health concern. So I don't know to what degree that extends to something like poison ivy or giant hogweed, or but certainly I do believe in some cases that extends to tick and mosquito control. I can't tell you if that's all of those, pertains to all of those ordinances where they've, municipal ordinances where they've made sort of widespread prohibition, but I do know that some of them make emergency exemptions.
Okay.
Representative Schofield.
Thank you, Senator Dill. Ms. Patterson, under current law, a school has, I'll use a wasp's nest above the entrance of the school or under a bleacher, and it's discovered, prior to school opening or prior to the athletic event taking place. So there's not a great deal of time to deal with it. Then you have to deal with it quickly, because wasp nests can grow quite rapidly depending on the time of year. What is the process today that a school could use to deal with that and do it legally?
Yep. So that's an excellent question. It's an outlier in the sort of world of pest control in a lot of spaces. The process of notification that I was talking about, where parents, teachers, and students, staff have to be notified in advance of an application. I mean, generally speaking, that's going to be where it's something there's time to make decisions, right? There's time to make a decision about a lawn care application. There's time to make a decision about poison ivy control. There's time, right, to make a decision about maybe crack and crevice, larger scale applications around the school facility. With regard to stinging insects, it is one of the things, types of applications that is exempted from in a number of ways in state law, current Maine state law. So you do not need to have a license to make a pesticide application to control with a ready-to-use product. So it can't be something that you have to mix. So it's something that any consumer could purchase off the shelf, but you can do, any staff member could do control of that hornet's nest. And obviously there's a recognition that it poses a potentially fairly significant threat to the health of people who are allergic to hymenopterans. So that's why that exemption's in there. The idea being it's a very limited, very targeted application. I guess if people were opposed to the use, they could also knock down the nest. It's a choice, but certainly they're allowed under current law to use pesticides to make that application, to do that pest control.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Yeah, sure.
Good morning, Dr. Murray. Would you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Good morning. I'm Kathy Murray. I'm the coordinator of the Maine School IPM program housed within the Maine Department of Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry. And I am the person who does most of the, in cooperation with Cooperative Extension and sometimes members of the Board of Pesticide Control. And sometimes we contract or even invite others to help with the training program that Megan Patterson has referenced quite a bit, that provides the mandatory training that all school IPM coordinators must complete.
And then what is the role of that IPM coordinator, very briefly?
In Maine, they are responsible for coordinating all pest management activities, including monitoring of pests, prevention of pests, making determinations if a pest situation warrants some kind of action, making decisions about what kinds of actions should be taken. It's a big, big job. And all of those folks are also, they have another job too. So they are facilities directors. Sometimes they're director of facilities and transportation. And probably partly because of that, and partly because when it comes to pesticide applications, a pest control professional is the most effective and efficient way to manage it. The good proportion of our Maine schools, when they do need a pesticide application done, they will contract with a pest control professional to come in. And they have to make, as Megan said, the school IPM coordinator works with their contracted pest professional to make a determination about if and what kinds of pesticides to use and how it's to be applied. And because of all those restrictions about have to notify parents and staff in advance, nobody else can be present when pesticides are applied for the most part. And those kinds of things. forgot what I was going to say about that. They will do it in the summertime, especially when we're talking about sports fields for herbicide control. Almost all herbicides are applied during the summer when school is not in session. So they have to put a sign up, but they don't have to notify parents and staff in advance when in the summer vacation time of those herbicide applications.
Thank you. Are there other questions for Dr. Murray from anyone? All right. Yes, Representative Ocean.
Thank you so much for being here and giving me the opportunity to ask a question. So I understand there's 29 towns that that prohibit this pesticide in use in schools. So therefore, there's schools also. Have you found from them that this is a challenge, that they're not able to use pesticides when trying to control pests at the school?
I'm sorry, I'm not really prepared to answer that question. I didn't realize there were 29. I am familiar with Portland, South Portland, Brunswick. I think many of these towns will have some kinds of exemptions, restrictions. I don't know that they're all just kind of blanket. One thing I did hear about in Portland was they were given a phase-in 2 or 3 years before they had to, that those herbicides were not allowed. And some of the schools, the Portland schools, made the decision to replace their natural turf with artificial turf because that would be a way of dealing with that situation. I think it's I won't say anything. It's an expensive endeavor to replace real turf with artificial turf, and the artificial turf doesn't last forever. Those oftentimes are replaced at least every 10 years. Very, very expensive. I think that many of our rural schools will not be able to do something like that.
Yeah, so I don't have a list of the 29. That was from testimony that was submitted to us. It was a public health nurse and in her testimony, she said at least 29 towns have prohibited the use of glyphosate. So looking at the scope of Maine, my guess would be that that's not just urban locations like Portland. But you have it, but as the person who manages IPM at the state level and is the contact person, that's why I would assume if they were having trouble and this was a big problem because this ordinance made it so that they couldn't use glyphosate, that they'd be calling you to find out what else they could do. But you haven't heard from anyone.
I have not. I will say that I often, check in with schools when we were doing in-person workshops. What I would hear primarily is that many of our schools find that they only have to apply broadleaf herbicides on their heavily used fields, their football fields, their soccer fields, the high school ones, about once every 3 years. Just because they get such heavy use, it's really difficult to grow grass repeatedly. But we do provide a lot of training and have done demonstrations on alternative approaches, the aeration, the overseeding with grass, watering, fertilizing, so that they can really limit the herbicide use in those heavily used fields. And then many schools, even if they don't have to apply those herbicides there, it's the baseball infields. Baseball infields is another place where, unless they've got the right equipment and the labor and the staffing to be able to spend the time scarifying those infields with mechanical methods, they will sometimes rely on one application of an herbicide in the summer when the students aren't there, just to kill off the vegetation in those infields. So that's what I'm largely familiar with. The schools telling me that they don't use herbicides very much, and when they have to, it's usually once every 3 years or so.
Thank you very much.
Sure. Representative Pluker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it's great to hear how seldom the herbicides are used and how much we're able to get by without using the herbicides. I think that is a sign that we're doing the right thing, but I think it's also a sign that perhaps this bill does not have as great an effect as we might be worried that it's going to have. I think that I think we negotiated this bill a lot last year, as I'm sure a lot of us remember who are on this committee, and that's how we ended up with the exemption for residential. We ended up the exemption for agriculture, as well as the school farms are all exempted. And I think we also heard a lot of testimony from the National Association of Landscape Professionals. We've heard from Bayer, that's also in our inbox. And one thing they continue to leave out because it hasn't been studied is what is the long-term exposure to this stuff on children, right? We just haven't been paying attention to the interactions of this in children. We've been looking more at farm workers and long-term exposure for farm workers. And we know, well, the science is, just as we heard from our friend, Mr. Mann, you decide which science you want to choose, but there isn't science, it appears, for long-term exposure for children to these chemicals. So the question at the end of the day for us is, we're saving our farms, we're saving the potential for residential areas to not be sprayed if they're nearby. Those are exempted from the bill. The question is, can we just go ahead and say, I believe Karen mentioned that she has some language worked up on excluding poison ivy. I have poison ivy here that I mow and I take care of it with mulching in different ways. And I have children who know to avoid those parts of the fields. I'm more worried about hogweed personally because hogweed's a mess. And also poison ivy, I take care of it with manual removal, which getting a little poison ivy rash doesn't bother me too much, but getting a hogweed rash can really hurt. So at the end of the day, I feel like this is a bill that is of limited scope with potential great importance to our children to protect them from this non-Hodgkin's lymphoma that we're seeing come up in people who do have long-term exposure to these pesticides. So I would move ought to pass as amended, and hopefully hear that amendment from Karen about the potential exemption for poison ivy and or hogweed.
There's been a motion made. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Karen, do you have a?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, I did follow up with the board to kind of develop some language that would create an exemption for dermally noxious plants. And the phrase that they came up with their AG was vegetation that causes public health issues, including plants that pose a dermal toxicity hazard. So there would be an exemption for herbicides used for that purpose. Is that correct, Representative Pluker?
Yeah, that sounds good. Do they need to contact BPC before or after the application, or is that just that they may apply it as they desire?
The way that I read it is it just would not be prohibited, and then whatever sort of regulations exist for the application of herbicides would continue to be in effect, a certified applicator and all that sort of thing. But if Megan thinks as otherwise.
No, it would be probably part of their regular, they would keep track of it. And if we pass this other bill we're going to discuss today, then it would be posted in a public place. So that would be fine. Thank you.
Discussion, Senator Black.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the motion before us would include the other herbicides, the glyphosate and the other herbicides. Is that correct?
Yeah, it would be synthetic herbicides, but they could be used in the case of dermally noxious weeds, so hogweed or poison ivy.
I guess I was just wondering if you would consider amendment to that or a change to your motion to include just do glyphosate and to have MAC look at the other herbicides and report back in January of 2023 to see if any of the other ones should be prohibited. Otherwise, I probably couldn't support it as broad as it is right now. But if we could if it was glyphosate only, and we could have Mac look at the other herbicides and make a report back to us, I probably could come on board and support that bill.
Does anybody else have a comment on that idea?
I would, I could support that, but I think if we did that, I wouldn't include just synthetics. I would include them all because I think there are concerns as Megan Patterson raised. So I would just say something about the commonly used pesticide herbicides on school grounds. So I could I would certainly support that too. Representative Underwood.
I move to table this until the next legislature.
Is there a second to that? Sorry, dies for lack.
I'll second that.
All right.
Dill.
All right.
So
is that even a motion you can make?
No.
Can we talk about that, guys?
Yeah, so you can't table it. It has to be either carried over or some other report, because it won't be carried over to the second regular by just tabling it.
I'll change the motion to carry over to the 131st legislature.
And I'll second that motion.
Yeah, we can't do that either. We can't carry it over to the next one. We could carry it over until January and just delay it, but we're going to have to vote on this one way or the other.
Mr. Chair, I just have a procedural question, if I may.
Sure.
So we're in the middle of a motion. Are we able to make another motion? Can we discuss that?
I mean, you can definitely make a tabling motion, and I believe you can probably make a carryover motion too, but I would ask Karen that.
So the motion right now,
right now it's ought to pass as amended.
I think my request to the committee is, or I want to hear about procedure, but my request to the committee is, if you don't support something, vote no and let it go, and talk about it on the floor. But I think out of respect to the sponsor who's done a lot of work on this, I think tabling it is not something I would do to another legislator. So.
Okay, so the question still is out there whether Representative Pluker would amend his amendments, and that is where the questions are at the moment. So Representative Underwood, we can't do what you have asked to carry it over to another legislature. So now I'll go to Representative Bernard.
Thanks very much, Senator Dill. I just wanted to say that I would support what you had to say, Senator Dill, about coming up with an amendment that we would look at and come back if Representative Pluker would agree to that.
Okay. Any other comments? Representative O'Neill, is your hand up again, or did you just forget to take it down? Sorry.
Legacy hand.
Okay.
I'd love to hear if Representative O'Neill or Senator Maxman had an idea about that amendment.
Well, I think I did before the tabling motion. I think that was my question, is I just didn't quite follow what it was. If someone could repeat it, please.
Okay.
Go ahead, Karen.
All right, so I'm going to go back to the first motion, ought to pass as amended. So it's my understanding the bill would be as is. The only thing that's amended is creating an exemption for using herbicides for vegetation that causes public health issues, including but plants that pose a dermal toxicity hazard. That's Representative Pluker's original amendment that was seconded by you.
Thank you. And then we heard some other proposal about a MAC, I think.
Yeah, I think I was the one. Well, I guess actually Senator Black added that part of it, but go ahead, Senator Black.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it would be good if we could, move this bill forward and make a decision on it. I think the amendment you have and add the MAC to it for the other herbicides and report back next year would be the right thing to do. I mean, just to keep carrying over bills, tabling and carrying over bills is not getting us anywhere. I think we need to be more careful about how many bills we table and just because we don't want to deal with them. And as Representative Neal said, if you're not in favor of a bill, vote no. I mean, but I would hope that we could amend the motion on the floor to include, to get more of the committee on board.
Senator Maxman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I definitely respect what other folks are saying, but I would not vote for the other amendment and would only vote for what Representative Pluker put out, for the reason that I feel like we talked about this so much last session, and I feel like we're just watering it down more and more and more. So that's where I stand, but respect where other folks are coming from.
Thank you.
I'll withdraw the motion and to table it. And if we could put an exemption in there for glyphosate, that would be good.
Thank you, Representative Underwood. Representative Hall.
I'll throw my 2 cents worth in. I'll go along with Senator Dale's amendment. I think that's very workable. Thank you.
Representative Schofield.
Thank you, Senator Dill. Yes, I was going to concur with what Representative Hall said. I think that we could pass this and have that report back to us next session. I think that would be good. I could support it. Thank you.
Representative Pluker.
So to clarify, can we do the bill as it stands now with the poison ivy exemption added into it, and then add the MAC at the end with report back in 2022?
I think if it was just glyphosate, yes. And the report back from MAC would be, they look at the other herbicides, and if there are other herbicides that the Medical Advisory Committee puts basically in the same category as glyphosate, and said, yes, we shouldn't have exposure to this on school grounds. And for all we know, it could be all of them. I don't know that. Or it could be any number. I think that's where we are. And that way, at least at the moment, when we don't even have to have the emergency exemption in there for poison ivy, et cetera, since it's an herbicide.
Yeah. I'm not normally the one to call a 5-minute break, but if anybody wants a 5-minute break to discuss this off mic for a second to just see where we're at, I'd welcome it.
Okay. And we can do that in a second. There's a couple more hands up. Yep. Representative O'Neill.
Oh, thank you. I'd also appreciate the chance to take a break. But just before we do that, I'd say that I would not be able to support that just because of how tailored it is. I think we're already taking a super tailored approach and building on our work from last year. Something I might be open to is having some kind of report back and review process. And I don't know what you'd want to call that, but let's say we go with the motion that Bill made and our Representative Pluker made, and that something we could add would be a report back at the end or something, if that's what folks feel like they need. But talking about kids and keeping them safe from toxic chemicals that are designed to kill stuff. So I think it makes sense to use a precautionary approach just for these limited areas. We talked about how limited we made it already. But yeah, that's all I want to say before the break about what I'm thinking.
Karen?
I guess before you all break to caucus, I just want to be clear on sort of what the two proposals are. But I don't know if I see Representative Pluker's hand up, so
Representative Pluker.
I had a similar conversation, Karen. So are we talking about taking out the ERAC and making it a MAC? Or are we saying keeping the ERAC on glyphosate there and then a MAC on the other herbicides?
MAC on the other herbicides because the ERAC is not needed on glyphosate because we're getting rid of glyphosate.
Okay.
Which seemed to be the problem issue.
Okay.
And so that's gone, and since that's gone, we don't need an ERAC to discuss glyphosate. Put the MAC in to look at the other herbicides and how the board report back on what the MAC finds on the other herbicides that would be or could be used on school grounds.
Okay.
To see if there are other chemicals that need to go.
Thank you.
So if I,
Yep.
Representative
Ocean
is doing like a wave.
I'm trying to get her. So yes, I just called on Representative Ocean.
Thank you very much. Could you first, I have a couple of questions now because I've been waiting a while to speak. One that could you define MAC and ERAC?
Yeah, MAC is a medical advisory committee that is set up by the Board of Pesticides Control to look at pesticides and their medical concerns. An ERAC is an environmental risk assessment committee, and they look at all of the issues, not just the medical issues. They look at other environmental concerns. The ERAC is very broad and looking at everything, and that's the one that's very expensive. And if I remember right, last time Megan Pattison said that could be a couple $100,000 to complete that. The medical advisory board or committee, they look at all the chemicals and all the science behind it, and they look at strictly the medical concerns with human toxicity and risk.
And that's a state?
Yeah, that's right. Those would be medical personnel that the Board of Pesticides Control would.
So does that give this a fiscal note?
I don't know if it would. The ERAC definitely gives it a fiscal note. I don't know if the MAC does. Is Megan still here? Representative Pluker.
I'm remembering from last year, both the ERAC and the MAC, it does create a fiscal note, but it's not out of the general fund. It's out of the other fund that the BPC holds that's built up out of registered pesticides fees.
Right.
the ERAC was $103,000 fiscal note.
Megan is back. If we could ask her on both of those, please.
Okay, so I can't hear anything you say when I'm getting moved into the room. So if you didn't know that happened, it does happen.
All right, so two questions. What is the cost of convening and doing an ERAC on a product or products? And what is the cost of the medical advisory committee to do their job on a chemical or chemicals?
Yeah, so those quotes that you were given were based on, I think, was it just glyphosate last time, or was it?
Last time it was just glyphosate.
Yeah, and so there's a huge quantity of literature to review with glyphosate. So we actually reached out to a contractor. So most states will employ contractors to do that work. That's where that number came from. So that's glyphosate, and that's to employ a contractor and to hire additional staff. We were looking at it thinking we were going to need to run multiple ERACs, which we've never done at the same time. And so that's just an enormous tax on staff time. We don't have enough staff to handle that. But I guess when it comes to the MAC, I'd have to speak with Pam Breyer. We'd have to look at it. But basically what we would convene is, and we've already sort of tentatively convened our MAC, which the standing membership is Andy Smith, who's the state toxicologist, and then also our medical doctor who's on the board, and the medical director for Northern New England Poison Control. So those are the three standing members, and they can choose who else they would like to have be a part of that group. But sometimes we've run them without any cost. I guess that's a possibility. I do think if this was limited to understanding what's currently being used on school grounds and how it's being used, I think probably they can get a pretty good grasp of that targeted application and where that's happening, and what the relative risk in terms of timing of applications and the specific chemistries being used. That's a fairly targeted question. I don't know that there would even be a fiscal note necessarily
for MAC.
for the MAC. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Karen.
So yeah, that just to highlight that there's a difference in the bill. It's an ERAC and it's for glyphosate, just whatever application. Where I'm hearing what you're proposing instead is a MAC that would look for herbicides, not the application of herbicides on school grounds and not just synthetic. So I don't know if Megan, you heard all of that in the discussion, but as she just said, it's a limited application, so maybe
Right.
it wouldn't be as exhaustive as looking at glyphosate for any application.
Right. I think the difference is just the scope of literature that you'd have to review, and in terms of the scope of applications to and environments. I think that it's a much larger project to look at all of that literature. I guess the only other thing I can offer. So there was a question about what are these tools. So these are actually tools of the board. So the board created both the ERAC and the MAC as a means of answering specific questions that are posed around pesticides. So it's more like a study group that the board utilizes. It's a tool they can convene if they feel like there's a more in-depth question that needs to be answered beyond the scope of a board meeting. So that's its function. And so it is the case. And the reason I had suggested a MAC is because it seems to be focused on children's health. And so a medical advisory committee makes more sense there as opposed to an environmental risk advisory committee and I guess to correct that, it is very specifically focused on environmental concerns as opposed to human health concerns. So that's the difference between those two.
Senator Black.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So before we break, can somebody state what the motion is that if it, before us, Representative Pluker's motion, so that we know definitely what we're discussing?
Karen, would you restate?
Yeah,
Pluker's
well,
motion?
that's what I've been trying to clarify before you go off and discuss, so everyone's clear on sort of what the proposals are. So what I'm hearing, as I'll call it Senator Dill's proposal, is that the prohibition in the bill would be limited to glyphosate only and not any herbicides that are synthetic, just that one. And then in section 2 of the bill, it would be a medical advisory committee process, and it would look at herbicides, all herbicides used on school grounds. So just that application. I don't know, Megan, if she's still here. Yep. If the time frame, what kind of time frame you would need in the bill, it's February 1st, 2024 for an interim report, and then February 1st, 2025 for a final report. I don't know if that could be shortened a bit because it's not as exhaustive.
Yeah, I would think so. More time is better, but I would think it could be shortened. I don't know that I can safely venture an informed guess right now, but I certainly could, if you are going to have an amendment, I certainly could have an indication of how much time I think it would take us to do this responsibly in an informed fashion.
Okay, so that, I guess, the detail will be open-ended. And then for Representative Pluker's amendment, what I'm hearing is that he's proposing to leave it, the prohibition that it apply to all herbicides that are synthetic, including but not limited to glyphosate. He would have an exemption for treating, dermal toxicity hazards. And I believe in section 2, it sounded like he was open to doing the MAC process, the medical advisory committee process, but I'm not, and I don't know, I guess, would it just be for glyphosate?
I think what we'll do is get rid of section 2 in my in my OTPA with no ERA or MAC, and unless we can come to some more general agreement on things.
Okay,
If Representative O'Neill is okay with that clarity, as she was the second.
Thank you. Yes, that works for me.
okay. So those are the two proposals.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Representative O'Neill, at least from our side, as you did last time, will you set up our caucus meeting?
Working on it. Yeah.
Yeah, because we don't have the process down yet. Senator Maxman and I talked about it the other day, and they're working on getting it to us. So it's supposed to be they're supposed to have an easy way of doing this, but I don't know how easy it is because we haven't heard yet. So anyway, so we will take, let's see, it's 10:29 right now. I'm not going to say 5 minutes. Let's come back at 10:45. That gives us 16 minutes. Hopefully we can discuss it in that time. So we'll break until 10:45. Thank you.
Hey, Jeff, you know, we're on Augusta time, so that means we'll take a good half an hour when it's supposed to be a 15-minute break.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Be lucky if we get back in a half hour.
That's right. Oh, boy. Boy, a beautiful day down here. I wish I was outside doing something. It's nice and warm, sun shining.
Well, we got no sun here. It's cloudy and overcast, but
Yeah.
it's nice
I
out.
was thinking the same thing. Cheryl won't open my video. Apparently you guys are better looking than me because she won't let my video open.
No kidding. Tom, you got to poke the little button down on the bottom there where it says start video.
Well, I did, and it says the host has asked you to. Oh, now she wants me to do it. She
There
wouldn't
you
let me.
go. There you are. There you are.
I just assumed you guys were better looking. That's all.
Not by a long shot, Tom.
Hey, she won't let me in either.
Well, there's no.
I can understand that.
There's a reason for that, Senator Black. There's a reason.
I didn't want to see you all for 15 minutes.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, she let me in again.
Yeah.
Last but not least. So it looks like we're all set, Randy, on that thing we just talked about, huh?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Good. Thank you. That would be helpful, I think, going forward.
Definitely. Definitely.
Is it just us here or is it everybody?
It is.
They haven't got done.
It's just
So,
just our caucus.
let's see. We have a senator. Oh, we don't have a quorum, do we? Well, that's too bad.
No.
I was going to say, if we did, we could make a new motion, vote on it, and move on.
That would be lovely.
Yeah, I think that would
Has anybody
really get them
anybody
wound
kept-
up.
Has anybody kept track of how many hours we've talked on this bill or a variant thereof over the last 2 years or so? It's quite a long time.
Yeah. I don't remember. What did we decide on in the 129th? What was we going to do?
We had a split just like we did today. You know, we're going to.
That's what I thought.
We had the Dill amendment, basically something like what. Though I don't think we even banned glyphosate last year.
Everybody, we're still live. We are still live.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I'm
We
going to
gotta
go get
figure
a
out how to
snack.
talk it. You know, I did already.
I'm headed.
I got a cup of coffee.
I was told by Representative Hall to go out and get a snack, so I dutifully went out and got peanut butter and crackers.
You're pretty good. That was pretty good. I generally don't do what Representative Hall tells me to do, but I think in that case, it would be an exception.
Okay, I guess we're back. So Karen, we have a motion on the floor from Representative Pluker ought to pass as amended. Would you read his motion, please?
Sure. So his amendment strikes section 2 from the bill and amends section 1 just to provide, create an exemption for the use of herbicides on vegetation that causes public health issues, including plants that pose a dermal toxicity hazard.
Okay.
Could,
Yes, go ahead.
on hearing that, could we amend that so it's that amend the amendment so that it's clear that it's for it's not including dermal toxic hazards, but plants that cause dermal toxic hazards?
Yes, vegetation that causes public health issues, including plants that pose a dermal toxicity hazard.
I would prefer only dermal toxicity hazards.
Oh, okay. Okay, so get rid of the first part of that and say just an exemption for plants that pose a dermal toxicity hazard. Gotcha.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, is there any other discussion? All right, then Cheryl, please call the roll.
I will. Senator James Dill.
No.
Was that a yes? I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry, no, I said no.
No, I'm sorry. Senator James Dill, no. Senator Russell Black.
No.
Senator Russell Black, no. Senator Chloe Maxman.
Yes.
Senator Chloe Maxman, yes. Representative Maggie O'Neill.
Yes.
Representative Maggie O'Neill, yes. Representative Randall Hall.
No.
Representative Randall Hall, no. Representative Lori Osher.
Yes.
Representative Lori Osher, yes. Representative Thomas Schofield.
No.
Representative Thomas Schofield, no. Representative Joseph Underwood, absent. Representative Scott Landry, absent. Representative Bill Pluker.
Yes.
Representative Bill Pluker, yes. Representative Jeffrey Gifford.
No.
Representative Jeffrey Gifford, no. Representative David McCray, absent. Representative Susan Bernard.
No.
Representative Susan Bernard, no. 4 yes, 6 no, 3 absent.
Okay, so on this bill, which is LD 519, it's ought to pass 6 and yes 4, but there are other people to vote, so it could flip around. But Karen, I need to have your expertise here. My vote is to pass something, but so how do we do that? It's
Yeah,
not a straight ought not.
So there's more than one way to do this, but so really the motion fails. So then I think it would be cleaner if someone else made another motion, perhaps the one that you were proposing, and then you take another vote, and then it kind of falls the majority report, minority report, and then the 3 that are absent.
Okay.
I had a question. I apologize. The vote we just took was ought to pass as amended, and that was Bill Pluker's amendment, correct?
Correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
But it failed.
Right.
So we're starting over.
Right.
A new motion.
Gotcha.
So the new motion is ought not to pass as amended. And it's banned.
Ought to pass as amended?
Yes, sorry. Ought to pass as. And what it is that we would prohibit the use of glyphosate. And then the second section would be a MAC committee would be formed to report back to us. on the use of herbicides on school grounds, and if there are any other ones that need to be also prohibited.
And the sort of the only open question on that is, and I think Director Patterson was going to get back to me, was on the timeline.
Right.
In the bill, it may be able to be shortened a bit,
Right.
as opposed to
I'm
what's.
actually hoping for that, if they can, to report back to us next year, so that
Okay.
we deal with this, while this group is still here. Otherwise, we throw it over to a whole new group, which is okay. If it's 23 or 24, but I'm hoping Matt can look at this and report back to us sometime in 22 would be my thoughts.
Okay, so that's how I'll draft it, and then at language review, if it's a huge issue for the department, then we can talk about that.
Right.
Has anyone seconded your motion?
I'll second that motion.
And Representative Pluker, you have your hand up.
Senator Dill, if we do get that 2022 report back and we included banning dicamba and glyphosate, I would join I would be in support of your motion.
So if we did it right now, if I add a dicamba to that, glyphosate and dicamba,
Then I would support your motion. Yes, sir.
okay, I will do that. I will amend it to include those two products.
So the,
I changed my, I support that.
His second is, he supports the second.
okay, so what Representative Pluker was suggesting is specify in the MAC that you look at the glyphosate and dicamba? No?
We are going to eliminate the use of those two products.
Oh, okay, in the
Then
prohibition.
Then MAC will look at the
Okay.
other products that are used on school grounds.
Okay, sorry, yes.
In the discussion that we had, it appears, and I don't know if Megan is still out in the audience, and I was going to point out, the question was, we had been told that some other states had already banned dicamba from the use on school grounds. And she's not
Gotcha.
there?
No.
Okay. So that's where we are. And I'm fine with that. I'll go along with those two. So, any other discussion? Seeing none. Cheryl?
I see a couple hands raised. I don't know if
Well, I'm
they're
not-
lingering.
I don't, am I not a, not maybe,
Representative O'Neill.
yes, I guess I'm not a host anymore because
I apologize. Let me fix that.
yeah, no problem. I just don't, I don't see anything.
Mr. Chair, it's me that has my hand up all there working on that.
Okay, go ahead, Representative O'Neill.
Thank
Sorry.
you. Okay, so I think I would have wanted to say this kind of before we went through all the procedural stuff, but sometimes what we've done when we've had a vote is wait for the votes to come in. So are we saying that failed and taking a new one?
Yes.
All right, it would be my preference to do it the other way. I guess I'll kind of talk through why. I think that we're talking about kids, toxic chemicals, and just taking a precautionary approach in some circumstances. So that's why I want to stick with the vote that I had taken. I think that a lot of people, would agree with when presented with this tailored approach, especially with the human health exemption, because we're responding to all that we heard about poison ivy and whatever the thing, hornweed, whatever Bill called it. So yeah, I'm rambling a bit, but that's where I plan to stay. And I think if I were to propose any option, I'll phrase what I had proposed privately, which would be to take a precautionary approach of banning these substances now and doing a medical review. And if there's some reason to let others in, let them in. But I would want to take the approach of protecting people now. reviewing it and then let people in. I mean,
Senator Paul.
I'm sorry.
Yep. Go ahead. You good?
Yeah, just my 2 cents. I tend to disagree with Representative O'Neill. I think that there's another amendment on the floor, and I think we need to vote on that today.
Okay, thank you. Any other? All right, so we do have an amendment here, a motion. So would you please call the roll, Cheryl?
Yes. Ought to pass as amended, and this is Senator Dill's amendment. Senator James Dill.
Yes.
Senator James Dill, yes. Senator Russell Black.
Yes.
Senator Russell Black, yes. Senator Chloe Maxman.
No.
Senator Chloe Maxman, no. Representative Maggie O'Neill.
No.
Representative Maggie O'Neill, no. Representative Randall Hall.
Yes.
Representative Randall Hall, yes. Representative Lori Osher.
No.
Representative Lori Osher, no. Representative Thomas Schofield.
Yes.
Representative Thomas Schofield, yes. Representative Joseph Underwood, absent. Representative Scott Landry.
Yes.
Representative Scott Landry, yes. Representative Bill Pluker.
Yes.
Representative Bill Pluker, yes. Representative Jeffrey Gifford.
Yes.
Representative Jeffrey Gifford, yes. Representative David McCray, absent. Representative Sue Bernard.
Yes.
Representative Sue Bernard, yes. That's 8 yes, 3 no, 2 absent.
Okay, so on LD 519, an act to protect children from exposure to toxic chemicals, ought to pass as amended, is the vote.
So what is the minority report? The 3 that voted no.
Thanks, Karen. The minority report is just what Representative Pluker presented in the original motion on our last vote.
Okay, so section 1 with an exemption for plants that pose a dermal toxic hazard, and then strike section 2. Just want to be clear.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
All right. We have 3 more work sessions, actually 4, because we still have the cider bill. Were we ready to vote on the cider bill? Or is there more work on that? Because I know Senator Timberlake emailed me and said he's available until noon. And so if you want to do that one now, we can. If it's not ready for vote today, it's on the table, so we can wait another week and do it on Tuesday. What is the committee's preference? Senator Black?
Did the department get any information for us from the feds?
Yeah. I haven't seen anything from them. So maybe we should leave it on the table because they were trying to get a federal definition of the word cider. So if no one has any objections, why don't we leave it on the table until next week and we can vote on it next week and hopefully we'll have a report back. You're absolutely right, Senator Black. So we'll just leave that on the table. So if Senator Timberlake, if you're listening, we're going to wait until next week. All right, we'll move on to LD 524, an act to require schools to submit pest management activity logs to the Board of Pesticides Control and posting of inspection results for the purpose of providing information to the public. And I don't know if Representative O'Neill is still here.
I am. I got up and stretched. Sorry, Mr. Chair. Will you repeat what you said?
Yeah, we're starting on LD 524, which is the school logs. And I know you had mentioned.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
right.
I don't know if you want to work it, but I know you, as you mentioned, there's a bill somewhat similar to this coming up, and the thoughts might be to work it together. So my question to you is, do you want to work this now for a while, or do you want to table it and we'll come back to it when we have both the data bills on pesticides?
Thank you. I think that it doesn't hurt to have Karen go over it quickly
Today?
and
Sure.
then we can do that. Yeah.
All right. Karen, would you bring us up to speed on LD 524, please?
Sure. So this bill establishes in law certain requirements of the Board of Pesticides Control related to pest management on school property. It requires a school to maintain a pest management activity log related to the application of pesticides. It requires the school to provide this information annually to the board. It requires the board to post the information on its publicly accessible website. And it also requires that the board post on its publicly accessible website a list of all board inspections of a school's use of pesticides and the results of those inspections. So the department testified in favor of this bill. They did talk about their Chapter 27 rule, which we talked about in the context of the bill we just worked, 519. Standards for pesticide applications and public notification in schools. And you all heard that public and private schools are required to adopt integrated pest management policies and practices. Schools are required to notify parents and staff, and signs must be posted in advance of most pesticide applications done during the school year. And any parent or community member can view pest activity and pesticide use records upon request. There was some testimony in opposition. Actually, the School Management Association kind of split on this. The school boards support the bill, whereas the Superintendent's Association opposes it. They say that schools are already required to notify the public and keep logs on the use of pesticides, and they feel like posting this information across the board is unnecessary. So this bill 524 is pretty much the same as LD 908 from the 129th legislature. That bill at the ACF committee at the time voted ought to pass on the bill, and the only amendment was the fiscal note. So the bill was placed on the appropriations table in the first regular. It was carried over to the second regular, and then when the legislature adjourned abruptly, it just died on the appropriations table. So the sponsor of the bill did have suggested amendment as well as the department. Basically, they both said, because there will be questions on how to best design and implement this online reporting requirement, the committee may consider changing this bill to a resolve, directing the board to research and implement workable methods for doing so in a manner that provides data in a clear and useful format. And the sponsor also said that throughout the idea of maybe limiting that the posting of information to sort of a few key of the most toxic pesticides. If the committee decides to move forward with the bill, the sponsor had some suggestions for amendments. One was provide a public health exemption, as sometimes schools need to act quickly. The second was to exempt disinfectants, since they are important in meeting COVID safety protocols. And then the department had some suggested amendments, clarify the use of the term species. In the bill, school property is the term used that's not defined, but as we just discussed, school grounds is defined in Chapter 27 rule. And then the last suggestion that they had is to strike the reference to certification numbers. The board uses license numbers and not certification numbers. So the last thing I want to mention to you is that although we don't have a fiscal impact statement, I did look at the fiscal impact statement for LD 908, since it's essentially the same bill. And the Office of Fiscal and Program Review did identify it as a potential state mandate. So hopefully everyone kind of familiar with that concept, but just for a quick review, what that means is there is a provision in the Maine Constitution that prohibits the state from requiring a local unit of government to expand or modify its activities so as to necessitate additional expenditures from their local revenues, unless the state annually provides 90% of the funding or the legislature votes by a 2/3 vote to exempt it from this requirement. So in your discussions, if you feel like this isn't a mandate, you can make that determination and you can ask me to revise the summary of the amendment to that effect. And in fact, that's what I did for the bill last session. The committee said, we don't think this is a mandate, even though you've identified it as a potential state mandate, and you basically memorialize that sentiment in the summary of your amendment. So finally, I guess, just to review, the legislature has 3 options when something's identified as a potential mandate. You could amend the proposal to eliminate the requirement, making it optional, for example. You can fund it 90% of the necessitated additional local expenditures, or you can add a mandate preamble and pass it by 2/3 vote in each chamber. That's all I have.
Karen, do you remember if last time DOE weighed in on what this may cost school systems or individual school systems, or you know, I'm thinking of my own school system, and I'm not sure that I've had this discussion with them several times, and basically the only thing that I think is maybe some uses outside, and those are usually by commercial applicators that the school themselves don't do it. So my question is, if that is truly the case in this school system, as well as maybe several others, there may not be much of a cost at all to doing this, but there also could be a fairly extensive cost if they use a lot of products, if they have rodent problems or roach problems or something inside. I don't know.
So it looks like I do have the file 908 in front of me. It looks like DOE did testify in opposition to LD 908. And I'll have to dig out their testimony to see if they address that. But I will say that the fiscal note for LD 908 last time does say that the local costs would be insignificant statewide.
Okay. All right.
But there's no dollar amount.
All right. No, that's fine. I was just curious. Other questions for Karen or any? Yes, Representative Pluker.
If the cost is insignificant, would that make this a mandate or not make this a mandate?
That's the $64,000 question. If you want a dollar amount. I mean, you know, mandates are subject to debate. So that's why the committee in the 129th said, you know, no, we don't think this is a mandate, and you could put that in the summary, but regardless, it, you know, would probably go to the appropriations table, and then that discussion would be had.
Was it a unanimous vote last time?
Yes.
I thought it was. Other questions for Karen? Representative Schofield.
Thank you, Senator Dill. I'm just wondering if Karen or maybe somebody could help me. How does this collate with 519 that we just spoke of, that we just passed? Could somebody kind of see how those codify together, or do they? Thank you.
I think they're distinctly separate. I mean, this one is really about posting information to a publicly accessible website and requiring, you know, that. So it's more about getting the information out there to the public, and it's not really about prohibiting a particular herbicide. So I think they are separate, and they don't really, they're very related, but they don't intersect in a way that we need to be careful of.
All right, thank you.
I don't think they relate to each other, one excluding the other, but what would happen is anything that would be applied, herbicides on the grounds, would have to be reported, which they are kept as in their own logs, but now would have to be sent to the Board of Pesticide Control and made available. So And if that had been the case in the past, it might have made our work on the last bill a little easier because we could have seen what was being used, but it's not. So. Other questions? Representative O'Neill, do you still think you want to table this until we talk about the other bill, or do you want to vote on this bill?
Thanks, Mr. Chair.
We have to do some amendments, I guess, but possibly.
I would like to table it so that we consider it as the same time as we have a conversation about another bill that we'll talk about a database generally. I think these are related.
Okay. So would you make that motion, please?
Yes. Yeah, I just didn't want to make a motion and discuss.
Okay, that's true. Are there any questions around that before she makes her tabling motion? All right, go ahead.
All right, thanks. Mr. Chair, I move that we table this.
Is there a second? Second by Representative Landry. Show of hands, all in favor? And it passes, so it is tabled. All right, we'll move on to LD 558, resolve directing the Department of Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry to study alternative cropping systems for farmers affected by PFAS substances contamination. Karen.
So this resolve directs the department in consultation with the University of Maine to study alternative cropping systems that are more cost effective than soil and water remediation systems for farmers whose land has been contaminated by PFAS substances and whose business development has been limited. So Representative Pluker, who is the sponsor of this bill, I think heard some concerns or feedback from actually proponents and those who testified neither for nor against. No one testified in opposition, but essentially I think it was MOFGA and as well as the department that maybe the better way to do this is to take a more stepwise approach. So he worked with the department on an amendment, and I did post that on the electronic file for LD 558. But so it would be a resolve to replace the original resolve. And what it would do is direct the department to require them to develop a comprehensive research study plan to identify and aid farmers who are or may be affected by perfluoroalkyl and polyfluoroalkyl substances contamination. And then it directs the department to develop the study plan in consultation with research partners, including but not limited to the University of Maine, UMaine Cooperative Extension, DEP, and DHHS, Center for Disease Control. And then in developing the study plan, the department may consult with a statewide organization working to protect the public and the environment from toxic chemicals, and a statewide organization representing organic gardeners and farmers. And it stipulates that the study plan must include research topic areas that may include alternative agricultural business planning, including energy production and alternative cropping systems, study needs, possible roles of state agencies and research collaborators to conduct the work, proposed timeframes, proposed budget, and target resources of funding. And then it requires the department to submit a report to you all February 1st in 2022.
Do you remember, Karen, did the department say they are actually already, is this one of the bills, I mean, one of the areas where they said they already had a group together that was starting to look at this type of thing, or was that on some other area?
I think it was on this one.
Is Nancy McBrady still in the? Yep. Can we let Nancy in, please, Cheryl? Good morning, Director. If you want to,
Good morning.
how are you today?
I'm well, thank you. Hope you all are doing well. Yes, to answer the question, we do have work that's ongoing, and my testimony reflected that there's work on the ground between DEP, the CDC, Humane Cooperative Extension. So we are certainly already in process.
So if this was to pass, does this help, hinder, neutral on what you're already doing, or does it just kind of codify it and that makes it move more smoothly maybe?
I think it helps focus, to be honest, and it's a great opportunity for us to take stock of what we're accomplishing and where we want to go.
Great.
So we're all working as hard as we can to try and find alternative ways to secure farm viability, and we've got to do it through research.
Thank you. Any other questions for Director McGrady? Seeing none, is there anyone else that anyone needs to hear from? Does somebody want to make a motion? Representative Pluker.
I move ought to pass as amended by the amendment that Karen just presented to us.
All right. Seconded by Representative Landry. Is there any discussion? Before we vote, Karen, would you read at least the amendment part of it, if you could? So everybody.
It strikes and replaces the resolve. I'll just summarize.
All right.
So it directs the department to develop a comprehensive research study plan to identify and aid farmers who are or may be affected by perfluoroalkyl and polyfluoroalkyl substances contamination. And the department is required to submit a report to this committee February 1st of 2022, which would happen anyway, by the way, by pursuant to joint rule, but people feel better when they see it in the law.
Right. Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Cheryl, would you please call the roll?
Yes. This is LD 558, resolved directing the Department of Agriculture, Conservation and Forestry to study alternative cropping systems for farmers affected by some substances and contamination.
Close enough.
Thank you. Ought to pass as amended. Senator James Dill.
Yes.
Senator James Dill. Yes. Senator Russell Black.
Yes.
Senator Russell Black. Yes. Senator Chloe Maxman.
Yes.
Senator Chloe Maxman. Yes. Representative Maggie O'Neill.
Yes.
Representative Maggie O'Neill. Yes. Representative Randall Hall.
Yes.
Representative Randall Hall. Yes. Representative Lori Osher.
Yes.
Representative Lori Osher. Yes. Representative Thomas Schofield.
Yes.
Representative Thomas Schofield. Yes. Representative Joseph Underwood. Absent. Representative Scott Landry.
Yes.
Representative Scott Landry. Yes. Representative Bill Pluker.
Yes.
Representative Bill Pluker. Yes. Representative Jeffrey Gifford.
Yes.
Representative Jeffrey Gifford. Yes. Representative David McCray. Absent. Representative Susan Bernard.
Yes.
Representative Susan Bernard. Yes. 11 yes, 2 absent.
Okay, on LD 558, 11 in favor of ought to pass as amended. It passes, 2 absent, which will have some time left to vote. And with that, I will close the work session on LD 558, and we'll move on to LD 700, which is an act to promote economic development and outdoor recreation through investment in state parks. Karen.
So this bill requires all revenue in excess of 4.5 million from user fees from state parks, historic sites, and the Allagash Wilderness Waterway, and other payments for certain services after all adjustments have been made to accrue to a non-lapsing dedicated revenue account to be used for capital improvements at state parks and historic sites. And this account may also be used to match federal allocations. So there was only testimony in favor of the bill. We heard from the Bureau of Parks and Lands that they manage 48 state parks and historic sites. In 2020, there were more than 3 million visitors who went to the parks, setting a new record. And the need for infrastructure improvement is great. There are crumbling roads, parking lots, deteriorating bathhouses and other structures, inadequate staff housing, and numerous structures that are out of compliance with the ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act. So these state funds could be used as a match to draw down federal land and water conservation fund dollars. Currently, state parks receive a biennial allocation from the general fund. And while that amount covers basic annual operations, it does not begin to address the estimated $50 million backlog in maintenance and infrastructure needs. So we heard about the passage of the federal Great American Outdoors Act, and the Bureau indicated that that will result in a significant increase in federal funds available for state parks through the Land and Water Conservation Fund, which requires a 50% state or local match. So this bill could generate funding to serve as the LCWF match. I did put on the bill analysis a couple of paragraphs about the Great American Outdoors Act, which was signed into law last August in 2020. We haven't received the preliminary fiscal impact statement. However, I did reach out to the department because I didn't know how much money that the dedicated account would get above the 4.5 million. So according to information that I got from the Bureau, the current undedicated general fund revenue for state parks is $5,486,595. So if you subtract from that the cap that is proposed in the bill of 4.5 million, that would result in $986,595 that would go to the dedicated account for capital improvements at state parks and historic sites. And I do see Director Cutco is in the attendees if you have any questions for him.
Yes, Cheryl, would you let Director Cutco in, please, in case we do have questions? Are there any questions right now for Karen? Representative Schofield, is yours for Karen or for Director Cutco?
Probably, I'm not sure, but I'd say probably Director Cutco. I just wanted to say that I support this bill wholeheartedly without any reservation whatsoever, except for a minimal one. And that is we have to, and I'm sure this committee's fine with this, but I just, while I have the chance to sit on a soapbox for just a little bit, we've got to be careful that we don't think that this is going to be the silver bullet that takes care of state parks going forward. This roughly $1 million is very important, but I think we all should always be cognizant that that is not all that's needed going forward, and that in the future bond issues, whatever, shouldn't be discarded because, oh well, they're getting this money, so they don't need any more. I just wanted to throw that out there. Perhaps Director Cutco could comment on what I just said and his thoughts regarding that.
Yes, good morning. Thank you, Representative Schofield. I can't echo those comments strongly enough. I think we've tried to make the case that we have a $50 million backlog in infrastructure and capital needs in state parks, and honestly, that estimate is more than 10 years old. So we know that instinctively it's a lot more than that now. We have not had capital monies coming from the general fund for more than 10 years in state parks. So quite honestly, what we've been doing is not really even keeping our head above water. And this, we are, we've been thinking about a number of different mechanisms to generate capital funds for state parks. And this is one that I hope you'll support. But thinking about the needs we have, I think Karen has mentioned them to some extent. Roofs on buildings, roads, bathhouses, plumbing, et cetera. We've got documented needs across the state park system. And that's just looking back to get us up to where we need to be now. Quite honestly, as I look to the future of the park system, I would love to see investment in things like solar self-sufficiency for some of our remote park stations, Wi-Fi if it's available. A number of other state parks have created remote cabins, much like Baxter has, that can serve as a different type of accommodation and a revenue generating opportunity. So, you know, absolutely what you said is true. We have huge needs within the state park system. This is a Band-Aid, but a very welcome Band-Aid to move us forward.
So a question that is probably for Karen. So this will create, it would appear, a fiscal note of at least $1 million. Is that correct? Because this will be money now not going into the general fund that would have been in the past.
That's correct. So it would, you know, the fiscal note would probably say something like it will result in a reduction of $986,000 approximately to the general fund and an increase in the same amount to this non-lapsing dedicated account. So just by virtue of funds being moved around in that manner would create a fiscal note. But.
Right. I just wanted to know what we had to deal with once we, you know, if I assume we'll pass this, but if we don't, I just wanted to know what we'd be dealing with for fiscal notes. So.
Right, because right now the money that is generated by the state park system just gets thrown into the general fund pot.
Correct.
And it's, you know, so that will be a loss for that pot of money.
Right. Thank you. Yes, Director Cutco.
Yes, thank you. I just thought of one other piece, you know, reflecting back on Karen's introduction and the information on the Great American Outdoors Act. She talked about the money coming into the state through the Land and Water Conservation Fund. And just within the last few days, I checked with our director of that program, and we've got roughly $2 million sitting in that funds that we can't allocate because it doesn't have the match. So we're getting, as you heard, a huge influx of money, federal money from the Great American Outdoors Act. That money requires a 50% state and local match. And we literally have money that's sitting there ready to be matched. So, you know, a swift passage of this could activate significant federal monies and put it to work immediately.
Thank you. Representative O'Neill, I saw your hand for a second. Did you have a question?
Oh, thanks, Mr. Chair. No, well, I wanted to jump in and thank Representative Schofield for his comments. I think it's an important reminder that this is a Band-Aid, it's a needed one, and that we don't think we're solving all of our problems by doing this. And yes, it creates a fiscal note, and we're the policy committee, you know, we can say that funding parks is important and appropriations can, you know, work on figuring all that out.
Right.
And I ran some numbers that I had for times when we had gone over and above the 4.5 million. So I'm guessing that number is just expecting we're going to have a better summer coming up this summer and the next, but I can share those numbers with the committee if they're interested. I have them in a document.
Say that, so those are just generic numbers, or are these, go ahead, just share them.
Oh, sure. Well, I looked at revenue and subtracted the amount
of 4.5
above and beyond. Yeah. So 2020, it would have been 758,000, 2019, 780, would have been 849 in 2018, and just over $1 million in 2017. So it depends on who's visiting and how well we do that year.
So it does vary, but probably at least $750,000 would be
yeah, something around there. Yeah, so it just means if parks bring in revenue above 4.5 million, that some of those monies are going to be reinvested in parks instead of getting dumped in the general fund. And like Director Cutco said, there's a really awesome opportunity at the federal level right now where there's conservation money available. So that means that we can bring in additional money by setting that aside.
Thank you. Representative Schofield.
Thank you, Senator Dill. I just wanted to comment on that. in my years with parks, it was the biggest factor in use is weather. And there are other factors, but weather is the largest, most impactful impact on factor on use. And also, I was just going to ask Director Cutco if there is a time limit on those funds. He mentioned there was a couple $1 million sitting there. Do those lapse at any particular time, or do we have any influence over that? Thank you.
Yes, thanks for the question. And to, I guess, get back to the trends in the numbers just briefly, you may wonder where the 4.5 million comes from. And the 4.5 was the average revenue generated over the last 10 years. Now, clearly, we've been on an upward trajectory. So in recent years, we've exceeded that 4.5, but that's where the 4.5 comes from. To answer your question, Representative Schofield, yes, there is those land and water conservation funds do expire. They can't be held on interminably. And to be honest with you, I can't remember exactly what that time frame is. I want to say it's 2 or 3 years off the top of my head, but I could find that information out and follow up. But yes, they do. Those federal monies do go blink in the night after a period of time.
Thank you. That was my recollection, but I wasn't quite sure of the time frame. But I think you're accurate. A couple of 3 years. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other questions? All right, I guess we're ready to entertain a motion. Anyone want to make a motion on this bill? Okay. Representative Schofield.
I move ought to pass.
Second.
Was there any amendments to this one that was made? Is it just Karen?
No, but again, it will likely be a fiscal no only amendment.
Right.
Yeah.
But I just didn't know if we, with us talking back and forth, if anything had been changed. So it's been moved and second. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Karen, please call the roll.
Cheryl, go ahead.
Thank you, Karen. I will. Thank you,
What
Karen.
did I say? Karen?
Karen.
Sorry.
All about Karen. Hello.
It's one of those days.
Ought to pass as amended, not as amended, just ought to pass. Senator James Dill.
Yes.
Senator James Dill, yes. Senator Russell Black.
Yes.
Senator Russell Black, yes. Senator Chloe Maxman.
Yes.
Senator Chloe Maxman, yes. Representative Maggie O'Neill.
Yes.
Representative Maggie O'Neill, yes. Representative Randall Hall.
Yes.
Representative Randall Hall, yes. Representative Lori Osher.
Yes.
Representative Lori Osher, yes. Representative Thomas Schofield.
Yes.
Representative Thomas Schofield, yes. Representative Joseph Underwood. Oh yeah, he's absent, sorry. Representative Scott Landry.
Yes.
Representative Scott Landry, yes. Representative William Pluker.
Yes.
Representative William Pluker, yes. Representative Jeffrey Gifford.
Yes.
Representative Jeffrey Gifford, yes. Representative David McCray, absent. Representative Susan Bernard.
Yes.
Representative Susan Bernard, yes. 11 yes, 2 absent.
On the matter of LD 700, an act to promote economic development and outdoor recreation through investment in state parks, ought to pass, was the vote 1102. It does pass. And with that, I will close the work session on LD 700. Karen, is there anything else?
Thank you.
Come before? You're welcome.
Yes, so LD 768 is an act to explore alternative uses of pulpwood and to support the logging and forestry industries. It's a concept draft, and it's my understanding that the chairs of the IDEA committee there've been discussions that they would like this committee to re-refer the bill to them.
Yes, and I think we've had that discussion. in chairs and leads, and I think everybody was in agreement with that. So I guess the procedure is, Karen, that we vote on this now to re-refer it.
There's more than one way you could do it. You could, if it's as easy as a unanimous re-refer vote, then you can do that today. Or there's that process where chairs and leads of both committees sign a form. But however you choose, I don't think that process is any faster than a vote to re-refer.
Oh, we may as well just vote to re-refer it. I'm not sure that anybody here necessarily wants extra bills to work on. With that, then could I have a motion to re-refer this to IDEA? Scott Randry, representative. As moved.
I would move that we move LD 768 to the IDEA committee, and that was requested by the sponsor.
All right, so that's been moved and seconded. It was seconded by Representative Landry. Moved by Representative Hall. Linda, would you please? I'm never going to get you straight here today, Cheryl. Cheryl, please call. That's my other committee. Cheryl, please call the roll.
I will do that.
See, Tom, you jinxed me.
Senator James Dill.
Yes.
Senator James Dill, yes. Senator Russell Black.
Yes.
Senator Russell Black, yes. Senator Chloe Maxman.
Yes.
Senator Chloe Maxman, yes. Representative Maggie O'Neill.
Yes.
Representative Maggie O'Neill, yes. Representative Randall Hall.
Yes.
Representative Randall Hall, yes. Representative Lori Osher.
Yes.
Representative Lori Osher, yes. Representative Thomas Schofield.
Yes.
Representative Thomas Schofield, yes. Representative Joseph Underwood, absent. Representative Scott Landry.
Yes.
Representative Scott Landry, yes. Representative Bill Pluker.
Yes.
Representative Bill Pluker, yes. Representative Jeffrey Gifford.
Yes.
Representative Jeffrey Gifford, yes. Representative David McCray, absent. Representative Susan Bernard.
Looks like this bill will follow me over to IDEA. Yes.
Surprise.
Well, there might have been one vote that wouldn't have wanted it. That she gets it anyway, so.
Yep. So that's 11 yes and 2 absent.
All right, so we will re-refer that to IDEA. Anything else, Karen?
Yeah, I do have a couple more things. A fiscal note review. This one's been a while. LD 34, an act to create the Maine Forestry Operations Cleanup and Response Fund. I did email it to you all last night, and it's now posted on under the LD on the committee webpage. But if you recall, the bill creates this fund to be used by the Bureau for mitigation and remediation of damages of forestry harvesting violations, water quality violations. And so the balance in the fund is limited to $20,000. So surprise, surprise, the fiscal note is $20,000. But if you look at the second paragraph, so that dedicated revenue from the Bureau of Forestry, permit fees, civil actions, and fines related to timber harvesting would be credited to that fund up to a balance of $20,000. And although the balance is capped at that amount, once expenditures have been made from the fund, it can be replenished to bring it back up to 20,000. So the fiscal note says the ACF, the department, has indicated it plans to divert a portion of the penalties assessed by the Bureau of Forestry to initially provide funding and then use remediation money from responsible parties to fund future expenditures from the fund. If expenditures from the fund exceed the amount of remediation revenue received, additional penalty revenue may need to be diverted to replenish the fund. Any questions about that?
Don't see any.
Okay. And then I also have language review. And I already used up my email allotment last night, so I did not send it to you, but I can share my screen. This is so this is the committee amendment to LD 568. We just voted this on Tuesday. It was a unanimous, oh, actually, no, it wasn't. It was one voted ought not to pass. So this committee amendment is for an act to establish a working farmland access and protection program within the department and a working farmland access and protection fund within the LMF program. So essentially what the amendment does, it adds that paragraph I on the second page, which I'm not showing you right now. It adds paragraph I that, so basically when it comes to the selection criteria, and the evaluation of applicants, it adds consideration of whether the applicant is from or serving an underserved or underprivileged community as defined by the department by rule. And then it just specifies that these rules are routine technical. So that's the gist of the committee amendment.
All right. Anything else?
No, that's it.
Okay. Committee, anything from you? All right. Can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
Move to adjourn, Senator.
Moved and seconded by Representative Landry. All in favor? Thank you all.
Thank you.
See you all later.
Yep.
Yep.